Hey everybody, and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program RP-0. We do have a little bit of logistics to take care of out here on the moon. Namely, we're going to get rid of this old supply pod because we really should have gotten rid of it a long time ago. The crew out here at Rosalina Memorial Station is actually due for another resupply. So the first step is let's get rid of this pod and then get back to the launch pad and get ready for the new one. We did not follow the old pod all the way down to the ground. This is a good way to make sure that it completely destroys if you're not actually watching it and the parts scattering around or anything of that nature. So that pod's done. We emptied the contents, bringing out the new pod, and it occurs to me that maybe we should just try to figure out a way to land one of the really big supply pods like the Delta or the Bravo supply pods that we use for Harmonia Station around Mars. Hey, one of those literally carries 10 years of life support stuff for a crew of 3. And then we could stop doing this every 5 or 6 episodes or so. Anyway, this is the updated pod style. It does carry a mixed resource, fuel, and life support. It's a little larger than the standard pod like we landed last time, so it'll actually probably stick around for a little while longer, going up still on a DN2B. It just lacks its own capture stage. Not a real problem there, but we should be rounding out orbit here in just a few minutes. We'll shut down the engine and get rid of the core stage. That'll have to be removed from orbit later, as I finally turned satellite stuff back on and realized we have a whole lot of junk here. So we'll plot out the node, make sure our appropriate resources are locked, get ourselves dialed in, especially to the sun, because this thing will drain electric charge even with those solar panels deployed. This adapted A upper stage is not really suited to stick around for the couple of days that it takes to get to the moon, where we also use it for part of our orbital insertion burn. So this whole system really just kind of needs to be thought about a little better, or from, I don't know, a different angle, but I think just going with a much larger, much less frequent resupply would be better. So we've shut down our center engine. We're trying to save the runtime on that for our orbital insertion at the moon, which of course brings about tragedy for the rest of the burn. I figure we'll go ahead and help out with some of these thrusters a little bit. We'll use about half of their fuel. We don't really even need all of it, but every little bit helps, I suppose. And then, of course, it is a long, long burn on the back of these RL-10s, trying to get all the way out to the moon. And then we'll go ahead and shut down 2 more engines, just so my thought here was that as we approach the moon, if we can slow ourselves down, it'll help accuracy. But then, of course, we have an engine failure, and we have another engine that is at low thrust, which means we have exactly 2 working engines, or 3 working engines out of 5, and of course most of them are on the same side. We'll relight the center engine, as we know that one will not cause us to go spinning out wildly. One more reason to replace this system as a delivery method is it is just kind of weird sometimes. But we'll get ourselves on a nice approach with the moon. We'll shut down that engine. 235 meters per second left in the tank. Good enough for a low approach almost capture. Of course, some of that might boil off. We do have it all in the very bottom tanks with the radiators. That should be helping us out a bit. I also did shut down the avionics cores on the drop pod itself. That does help mitigate our battery loss. They will be reactivated here now that we are in orbit of the moon. And then it looks like we can just go for direct descent, which we haven't had to do in a very long time. We've actually had to orbit these pods for a couple of days before we were able to make their landing approach to Rosalina Station. But this one, just a little bit of deflection, we can put ourselves right down on the base, and during the daytime, which is even better. Nighttime landings kind of suck. Anyway, the A upper stage is jettisoned away. We're now under the power of our 4 Astros 2 engines, and kind of circularizing out our orbital burn and trying to adjust our periapsis a little bit. I overdid it. We're basically going to hit the ground long before we get to the base. oversight on my part as far as the inclination correction and just not paying nearly as much attention as I should have. Also, for some reason, that avionics did not get activated, which may have contributed a little bit to our wandering. I don't know if we were even wandering from the node or if I just plotted it badly. Both are pretty likely. So now we will just speed up time a little bit as we are on approach. A little nervous about clearing those mountains, but we are not actually heading towards them. I did angle up just in case we needed to make a burn to gain some altitude, which turns out we needed to do anyway, because we were going to hit the dirt long before we got there. But we'll make one last corrective measure, put ourselves on a solid approach, and then because I wasn't paying attention, we are about to very greatly overshoot the base. I should have been burning from about that second correction onward just to make the approach solid. But really wasn't until right about here that I figured this out. 1,300 meters per second will be over the base in 1 minute. The burn's going to take 4. Oops. So a little bit of up pitch to maintain altitude. There's the base and the reticle approaching below us, and there's me just screeching right past. Still moving at about 600 meters per second as we fly overhead. We'll just lay on the burn. This thing was supposed to bring down enough fuel to top off the Mr.Science coffee maker / science explorer. But we can go ahead and burn some of that off to make our about face and get ourselves heading right back towards the Rosalina Memorial Station. We'll just touch up the burn a little bit. We don't need a really high approach, just enough distance to get us there. Small adjustments to the angle just to make sure. And then 275 meter per second burn or so to bring us to a halt, hopefully somewhere close overhead. Yeah, overdo it a little bit, but we'll just make slight corrections here or there as we are starting to make our final approach. Still 1,600 meters per second left in the tanks. Of course, that is burning some of the fuel that we are supposed to be delivering here. Not the end of the world. There's enough fuel in the lunar Uber to get us back up to Tremonia Station should we need to evacuate for any reason. It's just a little inconvenient. Maybe we can still get enough to top off our Mr.Science. I mean, that would be the plan anyway. So we'll slow down our speddy uppy bit here in our actual final approach. We're coming in about 1 kilometer above the base itself, just trying to plant the retrograde vector over the anti-target. I don't know what it quite indicates, but I know that if we line up that retrograde vector to it as we're falling straight down onto it, we'll be pretty accurate as far as dialing in our landing site. The absolute last thing I want to do is try to maneuver one of these dumb things around because I parked it more than the 25 meters away that those KAS attachment plumbings will do. So coming in a little bit hot, it does look like we're a little far away. So we'll light the engines and buy ourselves a little bit more time and just try to get ourselves actually inside of our range. Yeah, this is an interesting problem that I seem to have developed recently, is unsure of how exactly to dial in these landings. It used to be I was coming in too close, and so I'd have to wave off and then land too far. And now I'm just coming in a little too far, and I have to wave off and come in a little too close. But this, other than being a little bit of a thunk when we hit the dirt, it was in a great spot. So we will switch ourselves over to Rosalina Memorial Station. Systems engineer Laura Douglas will hop out and get a pipe connected to the drop pod itself. We've already got one fixed from the last drop pod that they just disposed of, and then start this super exciting, riveting sequence of the resource transfer, which I was not paying nearly enough attention to, or we had some stutters in frame. Either way, we'll start to drain out most of this resupply pod, which of course leaves us with more food left in the resupply pod than anything else. So one more reason to retire this particular resupply unit. It's not even balanced for what we need. Fair enough. We'll just let it hang out for a little while. And then, of course, we'll transfer all the fuel over into our Mr.Science science hopper, which really is just those 4 outside tanks that need to be filled. And then we can actually proceed with this mission, finally, doing science and collecting it from other biomes, which is really quite exciting. We built this during one of the live shows, and it is pretty much untested, which just goes to show you exactly how well the rest of this episode is going to go. Laura Douglas will hop back in, and then now I will turn you over to old me for livey-ish commentary. Alright, and now, finally, we get to actually range test, or field test, our Mr.Science sciencey hopper. So Val is going to exit the ascent stage, or the taxi, the lunar Uber, and get it prepped for launch. Okay, you can dangle your feet off the last rung of the ladder. That's cool too. Oh boy. Not the greatest of camera things to do there. Thanks, Val, for that. So we'll just get you clear of all the hardware here. And on over to the science hopper, which can only be operated in the daytime thanks to an engineering oversight. Yeah, it was an excellent job there. I am assured. Yeah, core overheating, shutting down. I guess we could pull off some RTGs and swap them on here. Link. Fantastic. Oh no, I didn't turn on the battery. Let's see if Val has enough charge in her suit to do that. I really hope. Board. 2,800 meters per second. I guess, do we have some fuel tanks locked here? Let's open up that battery. Perfect. Why only 2,800, Val? That's very interesting. It was like $4,000 in the VAB. I wonder if something isn't quite registering. We know the engine works. Alright, well, we're going to make a very short hop to someplace not that far away. We'll actually do control from here. Make things a little more stable. Alright, and we need... we're actually going to use the rover autopilot. Set a waypoint. Add waypoint. So we are currently in the lowlands. We are able to get to the midlands somewhere that way. Lunar seas, and I think there's a highlands around in here somewhere. There it is. And it's right next to it. So we will use this line as a guiding mark. Hopefully, we'll take a quick save because we're going to need that. All right, Val, please don't die. RCS on, stability control on. All right, here goes nothing. Val. Well, that's very, very interesting, Val. You throw this thing off that much. Okay. Yeah, spacesuits are heavy. Do we have a single tank locked where the other ones are not? Nope. Okay, shut that down. Come on. Okay, we need another pilot in here to balance the load. So we're gonna try to get ourselves back to ground in some kind of safe manner. Good thing is we're not moving very fast, so I really thought having all these thrusters would make this not so useless. Yeah, run science. There's something in there that I missed, which is why I ran it again. Just to be clear, but we're gonna go ahead and try to bring this in gently. I mean, I know it's not, but it really feels like that thing is screwing stuff up, so... Oh! Val! Okay, she's okay. She's okay. Shake it off. Good, good jump abort there, Val. Eh. Alright, let's reattach this thing into the base and maybe get our engineer out here. Actually, Val, why don't you just go ahead and have a seat, and we'll have Lord Douglas come out here, patch this thing up, we'll top off the fuel, and then try again. So with Val undoubtedly cursing the name of the terrible wretch who built this stupid thing, we will have Lord Douglas re-put on her spacesuit, descend the ladder, and ready her trusty DeWalt 18-volt cordless drill to go make some changes, but Val at the back end, she is impatient and uses her EVA pack and comes in a little hot. I mean, maybe not that time, but she's a daring one. First step is that we have to detach this port, but somehow it has become the root port, or the root part of everything on this lander. And while I think we have the range, we don't have the angle. So we're going to have to bring out another port to the Mr.Science in order to get everything set up. So first we'll attach a port that does have the proper angle here. We'll just take the second port because why not? And being impatient, she comes in just a little quick there. One of these days, that kind of thing is going to get us in some serious trouble. I'd like to think that it probably already has. I'm terrible about learning these lessons. So with the science rover hooked up, we will bring up the ascent stage, which has pretty much all the excess fuel. We don't have a whole lot of topping off to do. We're at like 238 of 270 on our Aerozine 50. But every little bit, you know, if we're dealing with as much delta V as I think we are with this thing, we do need every ounce of fuel. All right, unhook the plumbing, use your EVA pack. Careful now. Oh, good job. Well, how do we fix this? Should not have unlinked it. Obviously. I wonder if it can thruster power itself up. Why is that going for torque? Control from here. Nope. Pull in the gear. No, we're not going to pull in the landing gears. There we go. Okay. Laura. You stay on the ground. Val, well, this just turned into a whole bigger ordeal than we wanted it to be. Why are you sideways? What do you have in your inventory? Nothing. So why do you fly sideways, Val? I think that hit to the head affected her a little more than we'd like to acknowledge. Board. Bingo. Brakes off. Time to get to work. Alright, we can close out rover autopilot. We don't need that necessarily for here. What we do need is our robotic controls. And an engineer who can fix wheels. We may end up needing to drain the fuel from this silly thing again, but no big deal, right? Alright, let's come along the side that doesn't attach a magnet to our camera lenses or endanger Lord Douglas, even though this thing might be done for. We may strip the chairs off it and let it go autonomously. Alright, brakes, 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 Val. Brakes, Val. Okay, no big deal. Ah. You know what often helps in these things? Controlling from the... Why doesn't reverse want to work? Alright, engage brakes. So at least we're getting lots of good use out of this disposal unit, and that reattachable magnet does make things a lot easier. If only my piloting skills were up to it, and if only it could actually lift 5 tons. Oh, okay, good. The brakes are on. We've done most things. All right. Not the base Rototron. Top roto. Ooh. Have we already run over? Nope. Just barely, though. Just barely. Although, really, a rover wheel kick to the helmet would not be unwarranted in this particular situation, but she's lucky enough to just stand in the exact right spot in between the wheels, while Val really kind of struggles to put this thing somewhat near its landing gear, even if it means really kind of pivoting things all up out of the way and in a very ridiculous manner. It was quite a struggle just trying to get at least a leg or two underneath it. I figure it should be able to stand up on 3 legs, or balancing precariously on 3 legs and the engine bell. We should be able to figure these sorts of things out. And with all of our experience trying to right side up things on Mars, it's really, there's a better way to do this. We just did not do it that way because the disposal unit should be able to do these things. And well, if we extend the landing gear, breaks the magnet and falls flat on the other solar panel, rendering this vehicle essentially useless. It doesn't have an independent battery and therefore relies entirely on those solar panels. Now, we could also replace or move an RTG either from this disposal unit or the base itself. Val's going to hop out and collect this magnet before we lose it. And then we'll just switch over to the autonomous control here in the rover itself to back itself up and pick up Val eventually. Yeah, the brakes did in fact engage this time. Board. I don't know why we have a waypoint plotted there, but doesn't really seem to matter. I'll throw it in reverse, and I guess in either frustration or anger about not being able to fly something today, we'll just try to rear end the Mr.Science. Of course, gets stuck in the super thick lunar dust and refuses to go anywhere. We can't even push it, which really should be a pretty clear indication on how this is going to go. But whichever. We'll go pick up our engineer, Laura Douglas, for dealing with this magnet situation because for some reason Val can't just reattach it herself. Yeah, park right next door. There we go. Brakes on. Laura Douglas. We're going to try to maybe remove one of these magnets, but for some reason they are unable to be removed, it says. It could be that they are clipped inside the steel panel, although that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And her initial attempt to jump into the truck bed also fails, so we'll make that 2 fails for today. She can access the truck inventory, however, so we'll just have Val leave the seat for a second or two, throw the magnet into the back, switch back to Laura, who can collect the magnet from the back, and then even though she's many feet away, we'll just knock her helmet into the rover a few times for good measure. Yeah, the magnet's so heavy she can't even jump into the truck bed, but she can reach the hinge and go ahead and attach it in place to where it needs to be. Thank goodness. And now she'll make the approach from the side of the truck bed. Should be far smarter, but I think first it's her responsibility to get this thing facing upright. So we're going to go back to the we learned how to do this on Mars handbook. Remove one antenna, get it at an angle so where it will spring the lander upright. Replace destroyed landing leg with other antenna already extended. That's quite long. We can actually probably move that up a little bit. And actually, if you mount it in place instead of just hanging it there, it tends to work a little better and upright. Good job, Laura. Should have just done that in the first place. Alright, well, now we need to decide what to do with this thing. It's functional-ish. I mean, really, if we wanted to balance out the weight, we need to remove both of those ports, that one, and that one I think somehow became the root part because this thing is dumb. And we'll need to pull off a landing gear and replace it with an antenna. Or we could drain the fuel, scrap the science experiments from it, put them onto the rover, and try life that way. I mean, it's not the worst idea, but I'll let y'all tell me what you think in the comments, how we should proceed with this mission. I'm going to get both of our astronauts back inside. We're probably going to have to drag this thing closer to get the fuel off of it. That's not a problem. I think the disposal unit can handle such a task. Anyway, so that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out. I really do appreciate it, and I will see all of you in the next one. So until then, see you later.